Welcome to the general regular meeting of council on March the 15th, 2022. We acknowledge that the town of Kirkland Lake is located in the traditional territories for the Cree and Algonquin peoples and other Indigenous peoples whose presence continue to enrich our vibrant community today. We recognize and offer our gratitude for their care and teachings about the earth and culture. We honor their teachings through our interactions today and every day hereafter. We thank them for sharing this land with us. We commit to ongoing learnings about how cultural identity is celebrated, represented, and honored, as well as the inclusion of the Indigenous perspective through action. Megovich, thank you. Meeting called to order. We'll have a moment of silence. We'll have the approval of the agenda with an amendment.
Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Owens. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of council held on March 15th, 2022, beginning at 4:43 p.m. be approved as amended to include item number 6.8, 2021 annual summary report for the Kirkland Lake drinking water system.
All in favor? Motion carried. The declaration of pecuniary interest? None noted. Petitions and delegations? None noted. Acceptance of minutes and recommendations?
Moved by Councillor Owens, seconded by Councillor Shaba. Be it resolved that council approve the minutes of the following meeting. Minutes of the regular meeting of council held March 1st, 2022.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6, reports of municipal officers and communications. 6.1, signing authority update. Mr. Crocker. Any discussion? None noted.
Moved by Councillor Ivanov, seconded by Councillor Owen. Be it resolved that memorandum number 2022 FIN 004 entitled Signing Authority Policy Update be received, and that council approve the updated signing authority policy. And finally, that the updated signing authority policy be inserted into the corporate policy manual.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.2, 2021 council remuneration of elected officials. Mr. Crocker again. Discussion. Councillor Shaba.
I just looked at the page. I see under my name, sort of under travel and $407. I don't know going done anyway.
Yeah, so all of the conferences last year were done through remote access. So there was two of them, Roma and I can't remember the other name. So there was still a registration fee to attend those remotely. So that's what that encompasses, is the registration.
Councillor White.
Yes, I was actually just going to ask for a general explanation of benefits and allowances, what that entails, as well as the travel and conferences. I understand that that money is actually not money paid to us, but it's actually for, as you said, fees. But if you could give us just a breakdown for members of the public that may not be familiar with this, I'd appreciate it.
So the benefits, depending on the benefits that you sign up for, they can range from dental and stuff like that, or dental and the full range of benefits that are available to staff. Some people, depending on what you sign up for, you'll see the amounts are less. It's really that simple. I can provide something. I don't have any itemized in front of me, but
Yeah, Lloyd, there appears to be an error on Patrick Adams under DSAB.
Okay.
Does it show 3,000? I don't have my,
so those are figures provided by TSAB, so I'll have to swing back and see.
yeah, it should be 1,000.
But it could be a typo.
Okay.
I'll double check.
Okay. Any further discussion? Motion?
Moved by Councillor Owen, seconded by Councillor Shaba. Be it resolved that memorandum number 2022 Corp 001 entitled 2021 Summary of Remuneration and Expenses Elected Officials be received.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.3. Update on Museum of Northern History, Bonnie Sackrider.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Council. At the last Council meeting on March 1st, at the regular meeting of Councillor Ivanoff did present the following request for staff to provide an update on the negotiations with the Ontario Heritage Trust regarding the museum. What are the plans to mitigate the cost of running the museum? So when we're looking at what the costs are currently to operate any municipal facility, we typically have capital costs to the building. And something that is capital is something that is not an annual occurrence, and it's typically valued at over $5,000 in our Kirkland Lake policy. We haven't done capital works at the museum the last few years. We then have the operating costs of operating the building itself. So that would be our annual heat, hydro, cleaning, those types of things. And then we have the operating costs of the programming and the collection that we have at the museum. So to answer the first part of the question, on January 12th of this year, staff did meet virtually with a gentleman by the name of Leroy Shum, and he is a heritage architect with the trust. So he was basically getting some information from staff about the capital work that we have done in the past. As well, he was interested in knowing what type of programming we did at the museum. The reason he was obtaining this information was so that he could prepare the proper tendering process for the trust to be able to complete the building condition assessment. So in speaking with Mr. Shum, as well as speaking with other members of the trust last fall, both times they indicated that the trust would be completing a building condition assessment that they would pay for, because the last one was done many years ago, and this would give them an updated basically the list of the things that must be completed at the museum. And from that, they are then able to make better decisions moving forward on what they're able to take on. So that's where we are with the trust. So from that, staff will basically need to make sure that we do stay in close contact with the trust. We know they can't do the building condition assessment with so much snow around. So I'm thinking either late April or early May, we're hoping that we can make the plans for them to bring up their people to do the condition assessment. And then from that point, they will probably be able to present some sort of updated assessment to staff and council, and then they will let us know what their plans are. They have said, however, in both meetings that we've had, that they would consider capital costs, They would not be in the position to do operating, and they did not believe they would be interested in maintenance, although that is still perhaps on the table. So the second part of the question is basically, what are we able to do to mitigate the cost of running the museum? So when you're looking at the cost of running a facility, in order to bring the cost of the taxpayer down, we would either have to decrease the expenses or increase the revenue. So staff have been working very diligently on coming up with new ideas for revenue generation. The past couple of years have been tough at all of our facilities that do rely on revenue generation because of the closures that we've had sanctioned by the government. So 2022, we're hoping, is a better year for revenue generation. As I said, the staff have been working very hard on coming up with some new ideas, as well as enhancing the gift shop. When you're looking at what really costs a lot in the museum budget, the main areas are building operating. So that would include our utilities, the heat and the hydro, insurance, things like that, as well as salaries. So I did a breakdown for you just to kind of let you know over the past 4 years. So this is coming right out of our general ledger. It's an average of the last 4 years. So keep in mind, 2 of the years were COVID related, meaning we had some closures, and 2 of them were more regular years. So for these years, our total expenses were coming out to about $266,000. And we have a number of revenues as well. And the revenues were coming in about $65,000. So the net cost to the municipality would be just over $200,000. Museum staff are predicting a little bit higher for 2023. We're still confirming that budget, but it's looking like it's going to come in about $233,000. So really, if you're looking at what are the options, some of the options that the town has received, both from WSCS Consulting as well as from the trust, would be to consider seasonal operation of the museum. Just really quickly, we do have to just remember, if we were to go seasonally, we would not have the same operating grant afforded to us. That's the $29,400. It would be a reduction of that because that's for a full year operating facility. As well, our revenues would probably go down because a lot of our revenues are spread out throughout the year. Seasonal operation is definitely a service delivery reduction, so that's not something that staff would undertake on their own. We would wait for direction from council. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions I could answer.
Councillor Ivanov?
I only have a comment, and I mean, I look at something with 266,000 in expenses, and it generates $30,000 a year. It just sounds so ridiculous as a business model. It doesn't have any, I mean, if it wasn't taxpayer funded, and you know, the 30,000 that they give in operating grants is taxpayer dollars from maybe another form of government, but it's just such a ridiculous business that something has to be done because the town can not afford to spend, you know, 266,000 running something that nobody's interested in. You see $2,700 in admission fees. I mean, obviously there's nobody going there. It makes no sense to me as a business. I mean, people operating little in-home businesses selling bar soap generate more income than this. Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Casey?
I seriously don't want to start a debate here. I just, like, as a municipality, we're here to offer services. We're not a business. I think I appreciate where you're coming from, that we need to review how we operate the museum, but to say that it's worthless, it is worth something for some people in town. They do have people that go in that building, and it does offer something as a community.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, I see both sides of the story here. I see where Eugene's coming from and Casey's coming from, but the bottom line for me is we can't continue operating the way we are. End of story. So we have to look at all options very seriously. And the two things that we have to look at is reducing costs and increasing revenue. Now, when I worked at the Northern News, that was one of my regular places where I took photographs. We got a lot of free advertising out of it. Okay. I don't see a lot of that being done. Also, when I watch MCTV news, I see lots of area museums on their newscasts telling the public what they're doing, what special events they're having. I never see the Museum of Northern History. So I think there are areas that we can look at improving the museum's profile and getting it known to more people. But I think also we have to seriously look at cost reduction, whether that's going seasonal or not, I don't know. But I know one thing. I think we better talk to the stakeholders before we make any decisions, because one of the groups, or there's more than one group, but the arts community is one of the primary users of that facility in the wintertime. And to arbitrarily make a mistake without talking to the various arts group, I think would be a real slap in the face to our community and to those people. So yeah, it's a touchy issue, but somehow we got to increase revenue and reduce costs. And that doesn't necessarily mean shutting the museum down. I would like to see the museum stay. We should be proud of our heritage. I'm proud of the heritage here, and I wasn't even born here. So, you know, we're a good, solid mining town.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Chapman, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'd like to speak to the other part of this issue here, which is the cloud of uncertainty with respect to this issue. I mean, it seems to me that we've been kicking this can down the road, just kick it down the road, and we come here and say, well, what's been done? Here are the expenses, here are the revenues, and all of that stuff. So I think at some point, we should really make a decision. I don't know what that point would be, maybe in 5 months, 6 months with the next council, whatnot. But I really think that we need to establish a timeline, and at which we'll look at it again, and then we make a decision. Because everybody that the people that I've been speaking to about this, they just want a decision one way or the other. There's a cloud of uncertainty about this issue here, and I think that there has to be a timeline in which, well, we want to see production, or we want to see something happen. If it's not positive, then we make a decision, and that would be the end of it, and we can move on to another issue. Thank you.
Councillor White.
So speaking about this, we have given direction to staff regarding 6 out of the 8 recommendations that were given by WSCS. It was in the report. I do agree that this specific item is hemorrhaging funds, but most of our departments aren't. This isn't a business. This is public funded. Everything we do does not break even. And I do think we do have to follow those 7 recommendations as we're given, and staff have been diligently working, as well as the MAC have been working towards those 6 out of 8 recommendations. However, the wheels of municipal government do take time. It's nothing that we can snap our fingers on. I do have an amendment after all conversation about the original motion is discussed, and I will bring that forward once conversation has concluded about the original motion.
Just in regards to Councillor Chavez' comment about making a decision, obviously the capital expenditures that have to be determined on the building itself will not be done until the inspection is done sometime in the spring. So we're looking at the next council to make a decision on it.
recommendation is as follows. Moved by Councillor Ivanov, seconded by Councillor White. Be it resolved that report number 2022 CS 005 entitled Update on Museum of Northern History be received. And finally, that council direct that an investigation and a subsequent report be presented on the operational impacts of operating seasonally and other alternatives.
Councillor White,
The amendment that I would like to see brought forth is paragraph 3 be added. And finally, that council direct the administration's report be forwarded to the Museum Advisory Committee for their review and recommendation prior to presentation at council. If one of my fellow council members would be so kind to second.
Councillor Owen. Seconder.
Your worship, the discussion about the amendment only can proceed.
Go ahead, Councillor Owen.
You know, we form committees and they're volunteers from the public. And we ask them for their input. And, you know, sometimes we wonder, well, gee, why are we having a hard time getting committee members? Well, if you have committees and you don't consult them, when you're making decisions like we're looking at here, then why would anybody serve on a Town of Kirkland Lake committee? It doesn't make sense. I mean, they spend time thinking about it prior to the meetings, they attend the meetings. They have their input. And then if they're not listened to, it's useless. So I think this amendment is extremely important. We want people on committees. We want their input. This is a democracy. We want to hear from people. And I thank Councillor White for bringing this forward because it's not something I would have thought of. And I think it's very important. Thank you.
Just to comment, Councillor White, the committee would have the opportunity of reviewing the report prior to council, coming to council, so they can make their own recommendations as well. I fully agree.
Absolutely, that's the whole point of the amendment, because it is part of their terms of reference.
Yeah.
That anything comes to them for recommendation before being brought to council. So it's just really important that these volunteers that have dedicated sometimes decades of their life be afforded the opportunity to fulfill those terms of reference. So thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you. We vote on the amended motion.
So the amended recommendation reads as follows, that the recommendation be amended as follows. Paragraph 2 be amended as follows, and that council direct that an investigation and a subsequent report be presented on the operational impacts of operating seasonally and other alternatives. Paragraph 3 be added, and finally that council direct that administration's report be forwarded to the Museum Advisory Committee, MAC, for their review and recommendation prior to presentation at council.
Any further comments? All in favor? Motion carried. We have a motion. We call for a vote on that. All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.4, airport RATI project procurement procedure. Wilfred Haas, Director of Economic Development.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. In October of last year, the municipality was invited to submit a last-minute application to FedNor for a special program that was intended under COVID rules to support the airports of the north. Primarily, that was targeted towards service airports, which are not We submitted that application on January 26th. We were advised that we were successful in securing $900,000 grant. That wasn't reported to council. At the time, it was also reported to council that the project ends on March 31st. When the councilors asked, is that enough time? We had gone to FedNor and asked the same question. We were told that costs had to be paid or costs incurred. Costs incurred in the lingo means that you've made a legal commitment to purchase, but you can settle the invoice later. Subsequent to that, FedNor confirmed that costs incurred did not mean that. They want the project sunsetted by March 31st. I assume it is because it is a special project. That makes our task difficult to impossible. The supply chain issues that the world is encountering, as well as simply the time of year, make it extremely difficult to move forward with any meaningful purchases, changes at the airport. I'll give you an example. We released a tender for heavy equipment, and the tender came back in on March 2nd. Fantastic. The equipment would not reach here until October, November, and we're obviously not going to pay if you haven't received it yet. We don't want to lose this opportunity. Our airport is not eligible for funding. This is a once in a lifetime. We don't have many levers that we can pull. One of them is, however, the procurement process. We're asking that council allows us to expedite that by going towards sole or single sourcing. I'm not advocating to go out, make a call, buy something, walk away. We will do still the same due diligence in terms of getting competitive pricing, but we need the ability to act quickly when an item's out there. I'll give you an example. One is a snow blower. The tender that went out, the unit we would want wouldn't come in until, as I said, November. But we are able to find another one sitting on the lot that another municipality hasn't purchased. That's something we want the ability to jump on. This is not the be all and end all to the project. Reality is that the timelines are still tight. I assume that from $1 million project, we'll probably, I said in my report, expenditures of 100,000, perhaps 200,000, but it's still better than walking away from this. So the purpose of the report, to ask for single and sole sourcing in accordance with the clauses that were identified in the report with the proper reporting procedures attached to it.
Councillor Ivanov?
Yeah, no, I 100% support that. Well, I think, we have to get this thing done, and if we can pick up some, whatever, snowblower, other equipment the airport might need, and it's sitting on somebody's lot, I would grab it. And, I hate to see you waste 90 cents on a dollar on something that will never come again. So I certainly support this decision. Thank you.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, I hate sole sourcing. But there are circumstances where we may have to go that route. But what I would like to see is a full report back to council. Okay, take the snow blower, for instance. Report back so that we can let the public know. There was only one available, and we had to spend money by this date. Therefore, council gave us permission to go out and buy it. Okay, and that explains to the public why you didn't get 3 bids, why you didn't go through the process. With other stuff, it might be, well, we attempted to get 2 bids, but only 1 bid came back. Just so that the public knows that our employees did not run out and just buy first and so, because that's not good for staff. It's not good for council as well. So under these circumstances, yes, sole sourcing, but some sort of reporting back on the process.
Thank you. Councillor Owens?
I think this report makes it pretty clear why we're doing it. The report's already there as to why we have to do it. Like the public's aware, like if they read the report that Will created or it tells us exactly why we have to do it so quickly, because we have 3 weeks to spend $900,000. Wish I could do that.
Counselor Wong. But
Yeah, the report's there and that explains why we have to do it. But I want an explanation of the process that went through, that staff went through, as opposed to like, this would be a preamble. This is why we had to do it. And this is exactly what we did with this piece of equipment, this part of repair. The process that staff went through, just to keep it all transparent and on the level.
If I may, I understand your concerns, and what I would propose is that at the end of the project, we give the CAO a flow chart that says this is what was purchased, this was the process, this is why the decision was made, and that forms part of the record.
any other comments?
Recommendation moved by Counselor Owen, seconded by Counselor White. Be it resolved that report number 2022-009 entitled Airport Body Funding Project Procurement Procedures be received. And finally, that council authorize a single sole source purchasing of services, materials, and equipment in accordance with sections 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6 of the Corporation of the Town of Kirkland Lakes Procurement Bylaw 15-125 as amended.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.5, emergency repair to tech loaded mounted snowblower. Jim Roman, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, the council. Okay, this winter has been quite the winter. We're quite familiar with the amount of snow we've been getting so far. On March the 3rd, we lost the loader mounted snow blower suffered from a blowing. This is critical to snow removal. Use one in the snow board, center of the road. Use that snow banks when start using the road. It's springtime coming. Snow is possible. Type of flooding. So without this, without the we had to resort to snow with not nearly as efficient. So I would like to ask council to approve the budget capital expenditure. This is the source.
Counselor Owens.
If I remember correctly, at the end of our first winter on council, we sent this unit away to get refurbished completely. At the end of our first winter, we sent this unit away to get it refurbished. We got told that it was better because it's a heavier gauge piece of equipment. It does a better job than buying a new one that are lighter. So that company, we got it back October, November last winter. Is there still a warranty on the work that got done for this?
Well, I don't believe that had anything to do with the engine. It's the engine that was low.
The engine on the loader, on the snowblower itself. But pretty sure we got the whole thing got refurbished though. Doesn't that include the engine or just?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the material.
I think it was just the loader portion of the refurbished.
No,
Like they may have armored the, I understand that they did keep it up. It's been armored.
it got refurbished. Like if I remember correctly, it cost us over $100,000, 100 and some odd change to get, and they told us it would be as good as new. when it came back. So a year and a half later, if we're spending half of that money on it, but like, don't get me wrong, we need to get it fixed. Like, I get, like, I drive up on a lot of streets that are little trails, so like, I know we need this piece of equipment, but it just seems weird that a year and a half later, we're paying $51,000 to get it fixed again.
It's unfortunate when these things are wrong, like, they run it.
Yeah, oh, I don't get me wrong, I see that part, but
As far as the repair that happened. Sorry.
yeah, it was. It did get refurbished, right? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Owen?
This is very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. Because when it was presented to council for this refurbishing, it was presented as it was much better than buying a new unit. And, you know, it's got through 1.5 winters maybe. And now we're looking at another $51,000. Like, something doesn't make sense here. And again, this is where we need a fleet management program. We need to know what work was done on that. Was it serviced regularly? Was it serviced properly? Could this have been prevented? But without a fleet management program, we don't have that information. You know, and here's the perfect example. You know, you can't just go to your computer and pull up, and I would never ask you to go through a year and a half worth of repair bills. But you can't just go to your computer, type it in, and say, council, this is what we did on this date. This is what we did on this date. So it's very frustrating because it is such a vital piece of equipment. I mean, the amount of snow that thing can move is massive. And the amount of street that one piece of equipment, well, that is the loader, can do in one shift compared to loaders and trucks, it's night and day. But as I sit here, I'm very frustrated because we authorized that as a council. We did it in good faith based on advice we received. And now I'm saying, okay, we're going to put another 51,000 plus what we already spent. Maybe we should have bought the whole brand new one. You know? Because now we're up to the cost of a new one. I don't know. And maybe that's what we should be looking at, is buying a new one now. I don't know.
Councillor White?
Unfortunately, time doesn't move backwards. And as frustrated as we may be, it is definitely not this director's issue. He did the best he could with what he has in front of him, and I 110% support your recommendation. It is a piece of equipment that we cannot deal with out at this current moment. Like we said, this is one of the worst winters in the last 4. We need to get it done, and we need to do it before spring thaw. Absolutely. So I support your recommendation. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Councillor Shaba?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm gonna support this. But my question to you is, you know your capital budget more than any one of us. So can you maybe educate me on how much do you set aside for something like this? Because I'm sure we got all this equipment, you may be buying parts or whatnot. I just think that in a case like this where time is of the essence, and here we are talking about $51,000 and all of this, when that could have been easily covered through your incidental or auxiliary budget, whatnot. So how much do you actually put aside for emergency, for rainy days, just in case something like this will happen? Then you don't have to go through all the trouble of coming here, because as you see, time is of the essence. You gotta get it done and whatnot. So can you just a ballpark figure how much you put aside to take up emergency repairs? Thank you.
Well, typically, we budget for then quick, something like this. Well, sort of funds that are set aside. Now, when you get into and that's something we're working towards, but we're hoping to set it up so that set aside for we don't have money set aside other than
Any further comments or questions? Motion.
Moved by Counselor Shaba, seconded by Counselor Owen. Be it resolved that report number 2022 PW004 entitled Emergency Repair to 2008 RPM Tech Loader Mounted Snow Blower be received, and that council authorize the emergency repairs to the loader mounted snow blower as identified within the report. And finally, that council allocate the costs and repairs within the 2022 capital budget.
All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.6, use of corporate resources policy for election purposes. Jennifer Montserrat.
Thank you, and through you, your worship. Good evening, members of council. To summarize this memo, in accordance with the Municipal Elections Act, the town is required to establish rules and procedures for the use of municipal resources during an election period. This includes making contributions to any candidate, third party, or political party. Administration is recommending the approval of the use of a corporate resources and municipal elections purposes policy to improve on the clarity on the facts that corporate resources and funding shall not be used by a candidate or registered third party for campaigning or election related purposes. Although council has seen some of this language included in its most recent code of conduct, administration believes that additional provisions surrounding the use of town technology, being social media accounts and services, use of municipal facility buildings, employee resources, procedures surrounding all candidates meetings, and integrity commissioner services should be included. If adopted and approved, this policy will be circulated with current members of council, future nominees, registered third-party advertisers, current and future town of Kirkland Lake employees, with members of local agency board and commissions, and the various council committee members.
Any comments?
Moved by Councillor Stacey White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. Be it resolved that memorandum number 2022 CLK 006 entitled Use of Corporate Resources for Municipal Election Purposes Policy be received, and that the use of corporate services for municipal election purposes policy is hereby adopted and approved, and that finally that the use of corporate resources for municipal election purposes policy be inserted into the corporate policy manual.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.7, 2022 Phenom Conference attendance request.
Thank you, and through you to all of council. As the 2022 budget deliberations are set to commence, it continues to be a requirement that any 2022 unbudgeted expenditures be approved by council until such time that a budget is passed. At this time, administration has received the interest of his worship, Councillor Lad Shaba, and the CAO Alan Smith, to attend the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities annual Northeastern Municipal Conference being held May 9th to the 11th in North Bay on behalf of the town of Kirkland Lake. Given administration's fiscal mindfulness, this memorandum is being presented today in the interest of securing the best value for registration, as the early bird cutoff is April 8th. The town of Kirkland Lake currently has an education and training policy together with their travel expense policy, which will be adhered to by all the attendees. It is the intention of the CAO to provide council with a report summarizing its participation at the conference and to provide information surrounding topics of importance to the town of Kirkland Lake. And similarly, Mayor Keeley and Councillor Shaba will be required to provide a written report to council on their experiences at the conference, which will be circulated under council reports. And those reports could be expected at the June 7th regular meeting.
I prefer the provided a report, not a written report. That can be either verbal or written.
The policy as set out says written. So would you like to amend the recommendation to have a verbal report?
But you're gonna have three people sending the same report.
I think the spirit of the policy, if I may, is to identify that you may have a different opinion than your colleague on council, and the CAO may have a different report to provide based on the corporate administration lens. I think that's what the intent of the policy was, why it was written the way that it was.
Okay. Councillor Owen?
Yeah, and as individuals at the conference, you could be attending different seminars and listening to different speakers, which would be a good thing because it would give us more bang for our buck. You know, if we had one in each, if there's three speakers and one in each, provided that they're relevant to Kirkland Lake. So that wouldn't be covered if there was only one report.
Okay. No further questions? Motion?
Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Ivanov. Be it resolved that memorandum number 2022 CLK 007 entitled 2022 Pono Northeastern Municipal Conference Representation be received, and that council direct the Chief Administrative Officer, Mayor Pat Keeley, and Councillor Lad Shaba to attend the 2022 Pono Northeastern Municipal Conference on behalf of the town of Kirkland Lake, and that council allocate the costs associated with the registration, accommodation, and traveling expenses within the administration and mayor and council's respective 2022 operating budgets in accordance with the town's education and training policy and travel expense policy. And finally, that all attendees provide a written report to council summarizing discussions and the information received at the said conference.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item 6.8, annual summary report of the Kirk Lake drinking water system.
Thank you, Your Worship, for the council. The report that's before you, it's actually composite separate reports. The first report, the annual report on our drinking water system. This report has to be prepared each year by the safe drinking water, and it is to be presented to council by March 31st of the following year. This report should or must include a description of the system, chemicals used, a summary of any adverse water quality reports, a summary of required testing, and description of equipment expenses. Things to be brought to your attention. Major upgrades of the plant this year. For the installation of the SCADA system, the control system, as well as a couple of in terms of adverse water quality reports. We did have two incidents last year of chlorine residual town-wide in this case. Both of these low chlorine residual events came about during the transition to the new SCADA system. In the system, and it failed to allow when required. So those issues have been resolved, and they've actually hardwired some gun non-compliance alarms. So, other issues at the plant last year, there was a series of 4 failed turbidity tests due to a failed filter. This is dealing with water clarity. The filter wasn't there. And then there was one adverse water quality. Subsequent testing. Now, the summary report, which is also included, is more a listing of system preference licenses. It has to detailing regulatory requirements that were not met. There were no issues of that nature. Of note, plant itself last year was running at 40% capacity. So in summary, our water drinking water system is in excellent shape. We've got Aqua and Zero produce. They do an excellent job of fortunate that some of the best.
Councillor Shabbat.
Thank you very much, Jim. When I did my orientation, one of the things that I was told was this is one of the most important items, and I should pay a lot of attention to it for all of us anyways, so we could be personally liable. So I'm paying attention to it. The question that I asked last time, I think I'm going to ask the question today. When we have a big chlorination problem, everybody, we're all aware of it, the public and whatnot. But then I see a lot of incidences here, like turbidity issues, that we're not really aware. Shouldn't we be aware of some of those things too? I know they don't affect the public as such, they're rectified right away, but we should be aware of it. Like, well, we have this little issue of turbidity not up to par, and as such, we'll just want you guys to be aware of it so we can essentially understand the corrective measures that you guys have put into place. But I see them here. You just indicated that. Now, my other question is that this plant is operating 40% capacity. Is that by design? When this plant, is that by design? Or it just happens to be because our population is going down, all of a sudden we're at 40% capacity? Because it's really underutilized, right? Thank you.
Well, that's an average that is right at. As I said, there was actually certainly there's room for depending on I would suspect, but
Councillor Owen.
Yeah, I just asked Director Roman to pass it on to the operators and management at the water plant that I certainly appreciate the job they do. Yeah, occasionally my water smells, but I'm very close to the water treatment plant, so I get the bulk of it early in the morning. But we have very drinkable water, and we've, in the whole time that I've lived here, which is 40 years now, we didn't always take the time since I can't remember what year that plant was built in. I can only remember one extended boil water order, and that was this past year, and that was due to a non-alarm. And I think that's an excellent record that the staff should be proud of. And so I just ask you to pass that on to the Aqua operators, and thank you, because the Aqua operators answer to you, And I appreciate the fact that you being an engineer, you have the knowledge to deal with any issues that would come forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Give a motion.
Moved by Counselor Owen, seconded by Counselor Shaba. Be it resolved that report number 2022 PW005 entitled 2021 Annual Summary Report for the Kirkland Lake Drinking Water System be received, and that the council for the town of Kirkland Lake hereby accepts the 2021 Annual Summary Report for the Kirkland Lake Drinking Water System as presented. And finally, that the 2021 Annual Summary Report for the Kirkland Lake Drinking Water System be published on the town's official website, and a copy be made available for public viewing at the Public Works Office on Dunfield Road.
All in favor? Motion carried. Thanks, Jim. Item number 7, consideration of notices of motion. I would ask Rick, acting mayor, to take the chair.
Okay. Consideration of notices of motion. Do we have any tonight? Mayor Kiley?
Yeah, request for minister zoning order on the Boreal Medieval Forest project. I've had the opportunity of talking with the Nissing Mayor's Association, and they're totally opposed to a similar project that's going on in their territory. Basically, these properties are, there's no oversight as far as zoning bylaws, building permits, planning policies. They can develop whatever they want. They're leasing the land out. And we had somebody dial in proposing to purchase one in the Attachment area, which I now understand Attachment has canceled that project. But basically, these are small huts, 500 to 750 square feet, that are going to be laid out all across the land. Yeah, there's nothing for the property values. The building code is there's no code in effect. So I recommend that this be sent to the province, the same as the Western or Temiskaming Shores and Tri-Towns have done, and to put them on notice that we object to this type of project. Normally, the province does advise us of a building request to the province on organized township just for our input. But this has a lot more stronger wording and meaning to it. Highlights the problems that could arise from it. So hopefully we have the opportunity consideration of the motion. If you have any questions?
I'll ask Madam Clerk to read the motion, and then we'll open the floor to discussion.
Moved by Mayor Kiley, seconded by Councillor White, whereas developments known as Boreal Forest Medieval Villages are being proposed in unincorporated townships within the district of Temiskaming, and whereas the developers of these villages are promoting the fact that their developments are not subject to zoning bylaws, building permits, planning policies, or other municipal provincial regulations, and whereas the provincial policy statement 2020 states in territories without municipal organization, the focus of development activity shall be related to the sustainable management or use of resources and resource-based recreational uses. And whereas the provincial policy statement 2020 further states that the development of new permanent town sites within territories without municipal organization shall not be permitted. And whereas matters relating to territories without municipal organization are under the sole jurisdiction of the province of Ontario. And whereas the scale of these developments in the unincorporated townships possess a significant concern for the incorporated municipalities in the district of Temiskaming, including demand for services such as landfill, fire protection, police protection, and social services, increased demand on our emergency and medical services such as EMS and local hospitals, who are already dealing with capacity issues, environmental impacts to watersheds and groundwater sources. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Kirkland Lake hereby petitions the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to immediately enact the Minister's zoning order under the Planning Act for each of the proposed Boreal Forest Medieval Village developments in order to ensure proper planning principles are being adhered to by the developers and that their developments are consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honorable David Ficini, Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Honorable Greg Rickford, Minister of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry, John Vantoff, MPP for Temiskaming Cochrane, the Temiskaming Municipal Association, the Temiskaming Mayor's Action Group, and the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities.
Any comments or questions? Okay, if I may just make some comments here. I have a property in Masonville Township. And it's an unorganized area, and it is where one of these places is proposed to be built. And I just want to clarify a few things. Our Property Owners Association has looked into this. They were, needless to say, very concerned about this development. And what they've reported back is that the one that's proposed for property known as Swan Lake, they are offering to pay or make donations to the fire department. Now, I don't know about all unorganized townships, but actually unincorporated townships is the proper term. In Masonville, we have our own landfill, so they would not be impacting the landfill. In terms of impact on the environment, the one thing that was of concern to the people of in Masonville Township was gray water. So what the association has reported is that this group is in the process of getting gray water permits so they can deal with the gray water. Now, I haven't verified any of this. I'm just going by what has been posted. In terms of sewage, it's my understanding that they are proposing that each unit has a composting toilet, which is commonly used where there's a lot of rock, low-laying swampland, and it's a very, when used properly, is a very environmentally friendly way of disposing of human waste products. And what you end up with is a fertilizer. And so I have very mixed feelings on this. I'm not a really big fan of this development, but I wanted to make it clear that there is another side to some of these issues. I mean, policing would be provided up there. by the province in any case, whether they're there or not. I mean, right now there's a campground, so I don't see a big impact on policing. And if you want to look for some positives, if you bring people into the area, ultimately they're going to spend money in the area. So that now, mind you, I don't think we'll see a big economic spin-off because these people are trying to be self-sustaining, growing their own vegetables. But I mean, that's good for the environment too. We're not, we don't have diesel trucks on the road bringing in their food. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, Rick, the proposed site, my understanding, at least I just saw this on Facebook, that they had canceled their intent. So I'm not sure. And there was quite an uproar from the unincorporated people in that area. A lot of these they're based in small cabins and seasonal. They would add some tourist traffic. I don't think they're really habitable for our winter weather, depending on the construction. But we have no control over construction material or size of the buildings.
But that's no different than on my property. I can build whatever I want to whatever standard I want. And so it's no different. But if they're building, and I saw on one report, they were talking about straw bale housing, which is an extremely efficient method of housing. It's a renewable resource and extremely good, high insulation value. So, but if they're talking about skids being broken up and building a shack, it's a different story.
So just to bring the conversation back to what was presented to us, this motion is for the entire district of Temiskaming to support this motion for the entire district, not just what's going on in and around Kirkland Lake. I do see great value in lobbying the government to look into this, because much of Northern Ontario is unorganized, unincorporated lands. This is worthy of our support because you can see the larger picture. And with more people building, living off grid, who's to say that it's just seasonal? Honestly and truly, cannot guarantee that. We cannot guarantee that it's just in and around our area. It could be expanded further, and that is a draw on our infrastructure. So bringing it back to the original motion, I do see the value in supporting it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ivanov?
No, and I agree with Councillor White. This is not a small issue with with regards to just this. It's the entire area, and even this area. What they're doing in Swan Lake or what they plan on doing in Swan Lake could have there's no control. So I mean, it's nice that you consider straw houses are great, but there's no commitment they're going to build a straw house, and it's no commitment that they're not going to have fires out there, or people are going to that there's going to be any road maintenance, or that there's going to be any kind of control. People could build absolute shacks. It could end up being what we had here back in the 20s, what we called Peak Town, or whatever we had at the end of Kirkland at one time, and that could come back to haunt us. And so I would certainly support this motion.
And I think there may be legislation already on the books, because when a new mine goes in, they're not allowed to develop a town site around the mine. The people have to live in Kirkland Lake or B-Town or Larder, wherever. So I think there may be legislation on the books that's just not being used in situations like this. I just wanted to present the other side of the story. At the end of the day, I support the motion because quite frankly, I'm concerned about the concentration of people. The enforcement of the environmental stuff can be done, but you don't move out to the country, you don't buy a piece of property in the country, so you have a subdivision of 30, 40 houses next door, or just up the road. And and I know the people in Masonville Township, which is basically Susquehanna, have been very concerned, and they've been on this for ever since the first rumors came out, because there was two proposed. One at Swan Lake, and then the other one is on another lake that's feeds into Sass. I think in the one report it said it was in the Kirkland district, but my understanding from what the the property owners association, they were also dealing with the health unit for a grade permit, so it's in the area. Okay, if that's all the discussion, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Turn the chair to the mayor.
Item 7.2, Councillor White, the extension support of Northern Ontario School of Medicine.
I will currently be withdrawing my motion at this time, and instead I'll bring a report to council on item number 11.
Item 8, introduction, reading, and consideration of bylaws.
Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Owen. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, numbered, passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. Bylaw number 2022-024, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy treasurer for the town of Kirkland.
All in favor? Motion carried.
Moved by Councillor Ivanov, seconded by Councillor Owens. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, numbered, passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. Bylaw number 2022-025, being a bylaw to adopt the use of corporate resources for election purposes policy.
All in favor? Motion carried. Questions from council staff on noted? Notices of motion. Noted. Item 11, councilors' reports. Councilor White.
So my motion was going to be to request council support a motion from a different municipality to lobby the government to expand seats at our Northern Ontario School of Medicine. I was notified by our wonderful new CAO, Mr. Alan Smith, regarding an announcement that was made today from the Premier's office. And so I would like to read just a few little excerpts because it is good news and we love to share good news. The Ontario government is expanding medical school education as it continues to build a stronger, more resilient healthcare system, especially in growing and in underserved communities. Ontario is adding 160 undergraduate seats and 295 postgraduate positions over the next 5 years. It's the largest expansive of undergraduate and postgraduate education in over 10 years. So just to give an idea of what an impact that will have, currently, some Northern Ontario School of Medicine has the capability of only graduating 64 students a year. And so it has been approximate, we are short 326 positions currently. It would take 5 years to catch up to that if no one resigns or retires. So the expansion will support all 6 medical schools across Ontario, including our Northern Ontario School of Medicine. With the allotment, the Northern Ontario School of Medicine will receive 30 undergraduate seats and 41 postgraduate positions. So it's just amazing news, and thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for sharing that with me.
Through your worship, to members of council, I just have a couple of points that council might find interesting. During a recent Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities information session on homelessness, addiction, and mental health crisis in the north, the current statistics that were used for the physician shortage were as follows. From Northern Policy Institute, 163 communities in Northern Ontario are, quote unquote, areas of high physician need. And the Northern Ontario School of Medicine research indicates that 325 physicians are in demand in Northern Ontario. Just a couple of points that council may find interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
And the other exciting development with the Northern Ontario School of Medicine is that they are becoming a standalone university. They will be the first university, medical school university in Ontario. And I think that'll help attract students as well. And I have a concern, a local concern. I watched today as a contractor remove snow from one of my neighbors' front lawns. This neighbor pays every year to have the snow removed at least once from his front lawn because he has to, the way his lot is situated, all the snow that he shovels from his driveway has to go onto his front lawn. And eventually it ends up going in the street. I want to remind residents that it is illegal to move your snow onto the street. And that we do have a bylaw officer. And we do have a bylaw. And this is creating unnecessary danger for people walking and driving in Kirkland Lake. And unfortunately, every year it seems to be the same people doing it over and over again. And it's not right because you have conscientious Kirkland Lake residents who pay to have it taken away. You have other people that are just flaunting the law and creating dangerous situations. When you take a narrow street, like the one that I live on, and you remove all the snow from your lawn, it's going to end up in the street. And my street's not the only street like that. Earlier in the winter, I was on, I can't think of the name of the street now, but it was up in Federal. It was one lane. But why was it one lane? It wasn't the amount of snow, it's where people were putting the snow. I want to remind people that we do have a bylaw officer and we do have the power to fine you. And I think that that's going to have to start happening on a more regular basis because there's no need for it. Yes, we had more snow than normal this year, but last year we had less than normal. But we've got to think of everybody in town and pull our own parts. And if we have to have people, if we have to pay people to take our snow away, then let's do it. Let's be good citizens and good neighbors. Thank you.
during the past few weeks, Wilf and I and Jenna McNaughton had the opportunity of meeting with Northern College on basically housing necessities for Kirkland Lake, including student housing. And they're looking for opportunities to expand their housing needs for students as well. And we have another meeting coming up next month. So it's encouraging because the number of new students coming in are going to need housing, and with the demands from the mine contractors and whatnot, it's going to get a lot tougher. So hopefully something positive comes out of that. I also worked on the GSAB CEO hiring committee, and I'm pleased to report we have an announcement coming as a local candidate within the next day or two. Any other comments? Motion to receive.
Moved by Counselor Shaba, seconded by Counselor Ivanov. Be it resolved that the verbal updates from members of council be received.
All in favor? Motion to move into closed.
Moved by Counselor Owen, seconded by Counselor Owens. Be it resolved that council adjourn in camera pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended at 6:04 p.m. for the following reasons. Item 13.1 being a matter pertaining to the security of property of the municipality or local board. Item 13.2 being a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Item 13.3 being a matter pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations or employee negotiations, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
All in favor? Motion carried. Item number 14, matters from closed session. We have 2 items.
We'll reconvene in open session first, Your Worship. Moved by Counselor Ivanov, seconded by Counselor White. Be it resolved the council reconvene in open session at 6:54 p.m.
All in favor? Item 14, matters from closed session brought forward. Purchase of the network hardware.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to council. Basically, at a high level, staff identified that there are some key pieces of hardware that are required in order to continue safeguarding the town's network. And if it is the will of council, we're prepared to move forward with those purchases.
Any further discussion?
Moved by Counselor White, seconded by Counselor Shaba. Be it resolved that confidential report number 2022 FIN 005 entitled Purchase of Network Hardware be received, and that council authorize the purchase of network hardware, and that council direct that the purchase be funded from the Town of Kirkland Lakes Organization Restructuring and Efficiency Reserve. And finally, that council allocate the purchase of the network hardware in a sum of $44,687 within the Management Information System 2022 operating budget.
Further discussion? Unnoted, all in favor? Motion carried. Item number 2, request to purchase land adjacent to 195 Pollock.
Worship, through you to council, we have a request to purchase land by community living at, I'm sorry, the address that you just said. 195
Pollock.
Pollock. Thank you. With, as council would direct, if you wish us to proceed.
Further discussion, Councilor Owen?
I assume that all our normal conditions, that they pay for the survey, they pay for the closing fees and all that is included in this agreement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Motion. Sorry.
It's okay. Moved by Counselor Owen, seconded by Counselor Ivanoff. Be it resolved that confidential report number 2022 DEV 009 entitled Request to Purchase Land adjacent to 195 Bullock Avenue be received, and that council approves the sale of land described as 0.11 acres of land adjacent to 195 Bullock Avenue to Community Living Kirkland Lake for the amount of $11,979, and that council authorize the mayor and municipal clerk to execute the offered purchase and all appropriate sale documents as may be required. And finally, that council authorize the bylaw of the sale of the property be given 3 readings on April 5th, 2022.
All in favor? Motion carried. Confirmation bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Ivanoff, seconded by Counselor Owen. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, numbered, passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. Bylaw number 2022-26 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held March 15th, 2022.
All in favor? Motion carried.
Moved by Counselor Owen, seconded by Counselor White. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council do now adjourn at 6:57 p.m.
All in favor? Motion carried.